When I first started DJing, nobody was mixing, really. People just put records on one after the other. So when house happened, I kind of had to go back to the drawing board, really, and get a pair of decks and learn how to do all of that kind of mixing malarkey.
I was 17 in the 1990s, so when I first started playing, it wasn't really about the DJs. People never really followed the DJs, it was about the parties. So I'd heard about Sound Factory in New York, I'd heard about, you know, there was Hacienda in Manchester and the Spectrum in London, and there was all these different parties that were going off all around the country and around the world, and that was kind of what you followed. Or you followed an amnesia rave out in a field in the middle of Stratford, you know, and you followed convoys of cars. So you followed the party, and then it kind of became about the DJ in sort of 91, 92.
So my inroad was basically when I got to about 13, I started going out to clubs in London, and it was probably, like, I guess what we would call it then, like, I don't know what that music's called. Rare groove, I guess that was it.
I stumbled across a pirate radio station which was playing this kind of music that I'd never really heard before. It was almost like the sort of intro section of a Depeche Mode record or a New Order record, but for 7 minutes. And I was like, wow, what the hell is this? So I kind of followed that path.
We were there the offset, the sort of free parties of the DIY and the trance crews who crisscrossed the UK in the early 90s and late 80s. So we've kind of been there from the beginning. We've been coming to Ibiza for a long, long time, sort of 16, 17 years. So
I ended up there from being a DJ to just basically going out every single night I could, and realising that there weren't any female DJs. I was like, why is that? And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. And kind of, it's a bit of a feminist thing.
What always irritated me about dance music history was it was always written about in Mix Mag and DJ Mag as though dance music didn't exist before 1988, and my writing partner Frank Broughton and I met in New York, and we were living in New York, and some of the old guys that you'd meet in clubs there would tell you about all of these amazing nights in the early 70s and late 60s and the 80s, and all of these incredible records, and they knew the stories behind each record. They knew which DJ had broken which record and in which club, and we were just blown away by how much of an oral history there was in New York. So we just set out to kind of document all of DJ culture, really, right from the very start, and just kind of trace it up to where we were in 1999, which is when Last Night a DJ Saved My Life came out.
From right way back, just
tribal business, yeah. You know, it's like everybody's always danced, you know, like, and I think, you know, it goes right back to wherever, Africa, or, you know, like
just rhythm.
Yeah, you know, so it's all about that.
I just used to be really into jungle and drum and bass, so it's kind of weird that I'm doing house. I sort of know quite a bit about that side of things, but when it comes to sort of old house, acid house, like, I'm only starting to learn about it now. And yeah, it's really sort of interesting. It
was a massive journey because, I mean, we started with the jukebox, the invention of the jukebox, which was in the late 1800s. So yeah, it was a very long journey, really. But that was kind of part of the fun of it, of sort of delving back and further and further and further and seeing what we could dig up.
I guess, yeah, just getting into music, and if you really feel it, then you want to sort of research it and find out more, and then it really interests you. You know, you get passionate about it.
I think,
so
like,
you're going to search out, you know,
records
where
and
things
stuff,
come
you know,
from,
like,
or samples and things like that.
Yeah, like I worked in a second-hand record shop for a long time, and that was a really amazing place to learn about different types of music. You know, you were working next to kind of folk experts and blues experts and soul experts, and just that and music writing, really. Do you know what I mean? You know, like from reading The Enemy when you're young to, like, you know, just reading books and books about all different stuff, you know.
Most of the post-war history, we relied heavily on DJ interviews, and then we did research in the British Library and American Performing Arts Library in New York. finding press clippings about DJs, about discos and all of that kind of stuff. So it was a gradual process of building up a story.
Overwhelming to like try and keep up to date with people sending you tracks, so it is hard, but I feel like I owe it, because when I first started making house, the thing that got me sort of DJing full time was sort of all these big DJs taking the time to listen to tracks that got sent to them, and yeah, that's sort of, I really respect that, people who must have such busy schedules, but they still take time to listen to all these new up-and-coming producers.
Well, I mean, the way that people discover music now is completely different to how it was when I was a kid. I mean, I grew up in a little town called Grimsby in the northeast, and we didn't even have a record shop. So to go to a record shop, I used to hitchhike to Nottingham, which was 70 miles away, and go shopping in Selectadisc. So it was really hard to find information about records, but also to find the records themselves as well. So the way it is now, you can just sit at your computer in a bedroom in Carlisle or Helsinki and learn all about disco and hip-hop and house and techno and drum and bass without ever leaving your bedroom, and that's an incredible thing. I think it's great that all of this music is available for people, but I just hope that when they find it, they respect it in the way that we used to when we were kids, and because it was a much harder thing to find music when I was a kid, and it wasn't everywhere as well. You know, there was one program on TV and a little bit of interesting music on radio through John Peel and stuff like that, but it really wasn't all over society, really. You know, you couldn't read about interesting music in the Sunday Times, but you can now. So a lot of things have changed, and I think most of them are for the better. You know, I envy kids who are 10 now and growing up in this sort of culture, because it's a great time to learn about music.
The first track I made, all I had was a PC and a pair of headphones, and I made it and I was like, wow, this is pretty good. And then the next night after I made it, it got played on Kiss FM and Radio 1, and it was sort of like life change, and I was like, wow, I've just made this track on my little computer and suddenly it's on Radio 1.
Never-ending story, especially with dance music, because it just mutates and goes in all kinds of bizarre directions. You know, with dubstep, which obviously didn't exist when we originally wrote the book, and that's now quite big and crossing over into the charts. So, yeah, it's never-ending.
If you listen to what's you know, like at any one time, you know, I think there's a million things getting revived. You know, so it's like whether it's house records sounding like the early 90s again now, or like, you know, people making slow 80s boogie disco but doing their own twist in it. I think it's all recycling, isn't it, you know?
And there's stuff like people are sort of making stuff like almost subliminally, like they've sort of heard it maybe in their youth or something like that, and they're sort of making it again and then refining it.
A lot of what you see in clubs now existed in 1971, so essentially what we're doing is repeating previous generations' discoveries. And every generation, when they reach 18, 19, start discovering these things for themselves and thinking they're the first people that did it. And obviously that was what our history book was about. It was about saying that history goes back decades. So yeah, I think history does repeat itself all the time in different forms and with different music and obviously with different drugs as well.
That maybe the wrong elements of this scene will go down in history. I sometimes think the more commercial elements of what have gone on within the electronic scene will go down in history, and I sincerely hope they don't. Everything is born in the more underground sort of essence of music, like in the 80s, all these sort of underground 80s parties that were going on through London, and there's thousands and thousands of songs that people would never know because they know all the ones that hit the charts and all the commercial records, and that's what's been known as the 80s. And I hope that doesn't happen with this scene, because there's been thousands of amazing records that have been underground and they've not crossed over, they've not been commercial, they've not become superstar acts and all this thing. And I just hope that the industry doesn't, this scene does not get remembered for the few that crossed over into superstardom, because that would be a wrong indication of what we're all about.
Ooh, you'd like to think that your music will last, you know, and like, you know, I think like if you think about how obsessed we are with certain obscure bits of music from the past, and I think it only stands to reason that someone somewhere in the future is going to go like, whoa, what are these records, and maybe get influenced by them, even if it's only like a handful of people.
Yeah, I mean, if you're totally believing something yourself, then that rubs off on people. So yeah, I hope so.